Analysis is the bread and butter of English. In paper 1 and paper 2, you have to analyse, and it's a skill. English isn't like maths, where there's a correct answer, which is why it's so important to practice analysis and to develop that skill so that you can come to any quotation and break it down. A lot of learners tend to get stuck just retelling the story again, but the big marks come from being able to explain how the writer is using language to create a specific meaning. So first, let's look at the difference between summary and analysis. A summary tells us what happened. Analysis tells us how it was written and why it matters. Think of a summary as the what and the analysis as the how and the why. Something I find myself writing all the time on mock papers is your analysis is too surface level. To understand what I mean by that, I want you to think of a sponge. A surface level analysis is like just touching the outside of a wet sponge. You know that it's wet, but that's all. Deep analysis is like picking that sponge up and squeezing it until every last drop of water comes out. That's exactly what you want to do with the words that you analyse. You want to squeeze every bit of meaning out of them. Before we even start writing, we have to look at our quote and explore all of the connotations. The stars were silver needles piercing the velvet sky. So my thought process here is I want to squeeze this quote before I do anything else. The first thing that I'm drawn to is the word needles. But when I think of needles, what do I think? I think of something that's sharp, cold, metallic. It makes me think of going to the doctors. And it usually makes me think of something quite painful. Then I'm drawn to the word piercing. When I think of piercing, it is an active and forceful word. It makes me think of something breaking through a barrier. You might go and get your ears pierced and the needle breaks through your skin. It feels permanent and it feels damaging. The final word that I want to focus on is velvet. This makes me think of something that's soft and dark and expensive. It feels like it's something delicate that we want to protect. When we put these three words together, we've got a huge bit of contrast. The writer's describing a beautiful soft sky that's being attacked or invaded by something that's sharp and cold. It's not a peaceful image, it's quite an aggressive one. So once we've squeezed our quote for all of the ideas that we can think of, we're then going to use the P's method to write up our point, our evidence, our explanation, and our zoom in. So P is for point. It's your opening statement. Because we've already done the hard work with our thought process, we already know what we're going to say here. So the point that I would make is the writer portrays the night sky as something fragile and vulnerable. This suggests that beauty can often be cold or aggressive. So I'm drawing in on all of those ideas that I considered before. Your E is for evidence. This is your short, punchy quote. A mistake that a lot of people tend to make is picking quotations that are far too long. Your quotation doesn't have to be sentences long. You only need to pick out the bits that you need. Sometimes that might only be 1 or 2 words, sometimes only a short phrase. If you're not going to speak about a section of the quote that you've included, don't include it. When you get to the evidence, this is also the best time to name the technique or the word class. Our example quote is a metaphor. Silver needles piercing the sky. Stars aren't needles, we're saying that they are. We're saying something is something else, so we're using a metaphor. If you're not sure what the technique is, just look at the word class. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? If you're able to pick out a powerful verb, like piercing, that's often just as good as naming the technique like a metaphor. The most important thing is to avoid feature spotting. You get more marks for a developed analysis than for just picking out a fancy term. It is much, much better for you to pick out a quote that you can actually speak about and that you can explain than to pick out a simile or a metaphor just because you know that's what it is and have nothing to say about it. So the next D is for explanation. This is where we explain the writer's choices. Why did they use this specific image instead of just saying that the stars were bright? The beauty of English is that there are so many different meanings for things, and everything happens for a reason. The writer used this metaphor for a reason. Why? It's our job now to explain. So I would say something along the lines of, the writer uses the metaphor to flip our expectations of a pretty night sky. By using the image of needles, they replace a natural, peaceful scene with a feeling of cold, metallic sharpness. This tells the reader that the environment is not a place of comfort, but a place that might instead feel hostile. Z is for zoom. This is the squeezing the sponge part again. We're going back to these words that we explored earlier to find deeper layers. So I want to think specifically about the contrast between piercing and velvet. Just thinking back to what I was thinking about earlier, velvet shows me that the sky is delicate, like a fine fabric. But the verb piercing suggests a violent break. This shows that the stars aren't a gentle light, they are breaking through the sky in a way that's sharp. This shows us that the sky is being attacked by the things that are supposed to make it beautiful. Now there's still more that we can squeeze out here. Think of the word silver. Silver has lots of connotations. You might think of jewellery, you might think of wealth and money. But the first thing that it made me think of was steel, which is cold and hard and metallic. So we actually have another technique here, because we've got something that's soft and delicate and gentle right beside something that's cold and hard and metallic. They contrast each other nicely, and because they're side by side, it's an example of juxtaposition. So in my analysis, I could say something along the lines of, the use of juxtapositioning suggests that the universe does not care. It treats the beautiful sky like a scrap of material to be poked and damaged. That's how you find meaning. You just keep going, you keep digging, you keep squeezing the sponge until you get as many ideas out as possible. So how does all of that affect the reader then? Please avoid saying it makes the reader want to read on. It's much too vague. What does that mean? It's not going to do anything for you. Well, who is the reader? I am the reader, you are the reader, okay? How are you supposed to feel based on all of those pictures? We've got this delicate sky being stabbed, being ruptured by something cold and metallic. I don't think you're supposed to feel good there. Can you relate to that sensation of being pierced? Have you had a blood test from the doctors or an injection that you can remember? Have you had a body piercing of some kind? How did you feel in that moment? Can you empathise with the night sky here? So if I was writing this up, I might say something along the lines of, the imagery is creating a sense of physical discomfort for the reader. By turning the stars into needles, the writer's replacing a peaceful scene with a feeling that's cold and sharp. Instead of feeling relaxed by the night sky, the reader's instead quite unsettled by the harsh atmosphere. When you finish writing your analysis, have a glance over it. If your point and evidence is longer than your explanation, you've done it wrong. The explanation and the zoom should take up the majority of your response. If you've only got one sentence of explanation, you've not gone deep enough. It's very, very surface level. So whenever you finish writing a piece of analysis, get into the habit of asking yourself these questions. Did I make a clear point about the message? Did I use a short, punchy quote? Did I name a technique or a word class? Did I squeeze the sponge for new layers? And did I explain a specific emotional effect on the reader? If you are doing all of those things for each paragraph of your analysis, it's not surface level anymore, which is good. Like I said before, it's a skill. It's not something that you're going to be incredible at instantly. And if you're not practicing, you're not developing that skill. A really good way to practice is to take a quote from anywhere, from a book, from a film, from a news article, any quote at all, and try to find 3 layers of meaning. Think of all of the connotations. The best piece of advice that I can give you is just to practice, practice, practice. If you would like me to look over any work that you've done, just send it over to me. I am more than happy to give you some feedback.